Okay, sorry about that. What an awkward place to have to pause the video. So, as I said, one zero was found using the plus sign. The other zero is found using the minus sign. 4 minus 4.47 divided by 2, that gives you negative 0.47 divided by 2. And when you divide that by 2, you get negative 0.24 rounded to 2 decimal places. So those are your two zeros. There's some interesting things that sometimes happen when you are solving a quadratic equation using the formula. So if we take a look at example B, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Your next step is to calculate what is underneath the square root sign. And using your calculator, you would get that that is equal to negative 136. Now, since you cannot take the square root of a negative number, that means there is no solution to this equation. In other words, if you were to graph this parabola, there would be no zeros. This parabola would not intersect the x-axis at all. So this happens anytime you get a negative number under the square root sign. The other thing that can happen is this one right here. So when we go to solve this, we get negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. The double negative makes a positive. And using your calculator, when you calculate this under the square root sign, you end up with a 0. And the square root of 0 is just 0. So if you were to add 0 or subtract 0, it's not going to change anything. So in this case, you just have one solution of 4 over 8, or 1/2 in lowest terms. Sometimes you only get one answer. What would happen, this would mean that if you were to graph this parabola, it would only intersect the x-axis in one spot, which is its vertex. So you could get two solutions, one solution, or no solutions. Lastly, what you need to be able to do is to solve word problems. So the height of a golf ball after being hit is described using this equation. So this is what your graph looks like. H is the height in meters and T is the time in seconds. The question asks, is this ball being hit from the ground or on a tee? How do you know? The special point when the ball starts is the y-intercept. When your equation is in standard form, the y-intercept is the constant term that is being added at the end. Because there is no constant term, it really means the constant term is 0, so that means it's being hit from the ground. So because the y-intercept is equal to 0, you're hitting the ball from the ground. If you had a constant term being added at the end, then that means that the y-intercept would not be 0 and you would have been hitting it from a tee. The next question is, when does the ball hit the ground? Any question that asks something like when does the ball hit the ground, for how long is the ball in the air, or when does the ball land, that means you are looking for the zeros. So to find the zeros, you can factor or you can use the formula. Because this is just a binomial, factoring would be the easiest. So the greatest common factor would be negative 5t, and you would be left with t minus 4. So take each factor, set it equal to 0. In this case, divide both sides by negative 5. Take this factor, set it equal to 0. Add 4 to both sides. So that means one of your zeros is at 0 and one of your zeros is at 4. So therefore it takes 4 seconds to land. For question C, it says how long is the ball over a height of 10 meters? In this case, that means we have to substitute 10 in for the height. So we have 10 equals negative 5t squared plus 20t. You can't do anything with your equation until it's in standard form, which means you have to subtract 10 from both sides. Once again, to solve for t, you could factor or you could use the formula. If you were going to factor, the first thing you would want to notice is that everything can be divided by negative 5. So there's a common factor of negative 5. And that would leave you with t squared minus 4t plus 2. That now leaves you with a simple trinomial. So you're looking for two numbers that multiply to 2 and add to negative 4. Unfortunately, there are no numbers. So that means we have to use the formula. Now, you could use the formula using these numbers, or you could use the formula using these numbers. It really doesn't matter. Using these numbers just means that you have smaller numbers to work with. So t equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Again, you might have used the 20 here and the negative 5 for a and the negative 10 for c. Doesn't matter, you would get the same answer. So when you calculate this in your calculator, you get 8. And the square root of 8 is 2.8. It says to round to 1 decimal place. So one value of t is found using the positive. And that works out to 6.8 over 2, which is 3.4. 1 is found using the negative for minus 2.8 over 2. It's 1.2 over 2, which is 0.6. So what that means is that the ball hits 10 meters on the way up at 0.6 seconds and it hits 10 meters on the way down at 3.4 seconds. So it is over a height of 10 meters between the two times. So 3.4 minus 0.6 is 2.8. So that is how long it is over a height of 10 meters. So in Unit 4, we looked at word problems that dealt with the zeros mostly. In Unit 5, we look at word problems that deal with the vertex. On the exam or the summative, you will be looking at word problems that have both the vertex and the zeros in the same problem. So first of all, make sure you read the question carefully to know whether you're asked to solve for the zeros or for the vertex. And the other thing too is, if part A asked you to find the zeros, and then part B asked you to find the vertex, since you already have the zeros, you might want to average the zeros to find the vertex rather than completing the square. It's totally up to you, but we'll review all of the vertex work in the next unit's review. If there's any of this that you didn't understand, please make note of it and ask your teacher. Thank you.